celebrate Pentecost today, the birth of the church. A lot of people are wearing red. I have a red tie. I'm not exactly sure how the red got going with it, but that's the only day I think in the liturgical colors that we wear red. Pentecost means 50. It's a Greek term meaning Pentecost, meaning 50, and it goes back. It goes back to the times of agriculture. It's the agricultural calendar of that region, and the way I understand it is the plantings, the grains that are planted. They're planted in the fall. You have rains in the fall. I was looking it up. I think it's like October, November. You have rains in the fall, and then the grains are planted, and then the grains go through whatever grains go through, and then emerging in late winter, early spring is going to be your first harvest, which is going to be the barley harvest. And that barley harvest is going to be the Book of Ruth is during that barley harvest. And at that barley harvest is also going to be, that Passover is going to be celebrated at that barley harvest. Because also at the end of Passover, I think it's a festival, it's a week-long festival, and then they have a festival of weeks. So the festival of weeks is a week of weeks, that's 7 is 40, that's 49 plus 1. And so the way agriculturally it works out is after the first harvest of the barley, after that first cutting, then we're going to go 50 days, week of weeks, and then we're going to begin the second harvest, and that's going to be the harvest of the wheat or the grains. Also in botany, botanists have traced the origins of seeds around the planet, and this is where the grains, this part of the planet is where the grains originate, and this part of the planets are the oldest villages, I think going back 10,000 years plus, the domestication of crops. So this is, we call it the birth of the church, and it is the harvest of the church. It's the harvest of souls, and so it's easy to say, like a lot of people have, what does a bunch of farmers have to do with me? What do the grains have to do with me? Or what a bunch of shepherds have to do with me? Not very much, except that's the way it's all laid out. Jesus Christ talks about that in his ministry. It's recorded. The fields are ripe with harvest. Pray to the Lord of the harvest. But it's kind of hard to get there from our writings, and so I'm going to really focus down on John, and then I'll flip from John into Acts 2. And then when he comes, he will prove the world wrong about sin, righteousness, and judgment. Prove the world. That's going to be electco. I'm not very good at my Greek pronunciations, but prove's going to be a good start, but it's going to be a lot more than just prove, because it's about that the world at large is liable to reproach, disgrace, shame, cowardly acts. This is a whole lot more serious than a mathematical proof. It's a whole lot more serious than a couple of kids on the playground. Actually, it's I'm going to have to get to it through. I'm going to have to go through something that's kind of horrifying, but I'm not going to stay there long. I think it's okay for children, because Jerusalem is in what's called damage control. Jerusalem has now shut things down. The authorities of Jerusalem have shut things down. The apostles are in this upper room. They're in prayer together because things are still happening in the streets, and they haven't begun to quiet down yet. But what I'm going to go to is to really get us to where this Holy Spirit is going to prove how John records it. I'm going to go to something that's almost too tender to go to, and it's going to be called the Nuremberg Trials. Nuremberg Trials. The Nuremberg Trials were a series of military tribunals held by the Allied forces under international law. and the laws of war after World War II. The trials were most notable for the prosecution of the prominent members of the political, military, judicial, economic leadership of Nazi Germany who planned, who carried out, otherwise participated in what's called the Holocaust. So it's a delicate subject. And other war crimes. The trials were held in the city of Nuremberg, Germany, and their decisions marked a turning point between classical and contemporary international law. The first and the best known set of these trials were those, I'm using the word trials because that's what this proof is. This proof is these evidences. And who's on trial? It's the world. It's humanity that's on trial. And these are the evidences. The first and best known of these trials were those of the major war criminals before the International Military Tribunal. These trials were described as the greatest trial in history by Norman Burkett, one of the British judges who presided over them. Held between 20 November 45 and October 1, 46, the tribunal was given the task of trying 24 of the most important political and military leaders of the Third Reich, though the proceeding, so then it goes on and on. And so then you have a list of Hitler. Hitler didn't show, he's a no-show. Himmler's a no-show. These early guys were already suicide. Burkhoff, Krebs, Joseph Goebbels, they'd all killed themselves already. You can read about it. The tribunals, the Nuremberg tribunals, were to apply guilt. The work of the Holy Spirit, who will prove the world, who will try the world, who will convict and test. Some of the translations are exposed. I like exposed because expose is throughout the Old Testament. I will expose your nakedness. You are exposed. Your nakedness is exposed. So expose is pretty good, but we'll investigate. We'll prove the world about sin because they do not believe in me, Jesus Christ. It's the work of Jesus Christ, the whole public ministry of Jesus Christ, the work on the cross of Jesus Christ. We're not really interested in all this other stuff that's gone on for centuries. It's really not important. Right now what's important is Jesus Christ. So this is where this is all about. It will convict the world about Jesus Christ. They don't believe in me. They're about righteousness. Jesus Christ, because I go to the Father. That whole thing, theologically, we talk about a justifying. We talk about justice. Justice is in Rome. It means good, and stasis, good standing. So criminally, Jesus Christ is not in good standing. The Sanhedrin's tried him. Rome has gone ahead and said, okay, we really don't like what's going on here, but this is your call, and we will enforce it. So Jesus Christ is not in good standing in Jerusalem. Jesus Christ was raised from the dead. Jesus Christ is in good standing with his Father. That's what's called righteousness, right. Jesus Christ is in the right. So the Holy Spirit will run tests. The Holy Spirit will submit evidence about Jesus Christ. You're going to believe in him, Jesus Christ, that he goes to the Father, about righteousness, and about judgment. That the ruler of this world has been judged. So this is all done deal. And the only way I can almost get into it is through the Nuremberg trials, because this is a big, big deal. This is something that the whole world is focused on and riveted to, because all kinds of information is coming out in these trials that people are appalled, people are aghast. And this is also what goes on in Jerusalem on the day we call Pentecost. On the day we call Pentecost, the Holy Spirit of God comes to testify. The Holy Spirit of God comes to excite, enliven. And what we have is a bunch of grown men making a bunch of noises. It sounds like they've been hitting the hooch. But But these people that are in Jerusalem from all over parts of the world are saying, no, we're hearing stuff. We're hearing information. This is the information that we're hearing, we process, and we understand what this is. Probably the best I can give to you on this is that this is the AP Associated Press. That this is the UPI. This is United Press International. This is the Nuremberg trials, where they've gone to the trouble to set up radio broadcasts, and they've gone to the trouble to set up television broadcasts. And this is a public announcement. Just like John the Baptist is a public announcement, this is another public announcement. And this is a trial. And so if you open it up and say, well, that's kind of pushing it, aren't you? Well, this is what John's talking about. And so what happens? Because it's not about identifying guilt. It's not about condemning someone. It's about harvest. It's about, look what's happened here. That's what repentance is all about, metanoia. It's like, look at what you've done. And so that's what you have in Acts, and so then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord you say. You see, you that are Israelites, listen to what I have to say. This is Peter talking. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with deeds of power. That's foreign language. Attested. That's trial language. And the advocate is the way it's translated earlier. That's legal language. Roman law governs here. This is the law of nations. Israel's. They've had established law for 1,000 years. They've been working it. Roman laws is established, and they rule by the law of nations, meaning Roman law governs, but Roman law will not overstep your laws. You can govern by your laws unless we need to intervene. And so that's where Pilate was. Pilate says, well, I can't intervene in this, but Roman law tries to let the locals govern by their laws, and that's where Pilate is on all that. A man attested to you by God with deeds of power, wonders and signs that God did through him among you, as you yourselves know. So he's addressing the people of Jerusalem. This is 50 days after the Passover event. This man handed over to you according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. The Father's involved. This is the work of a God, not the work of mortals. And you crucified and killed him by the hands of those outside the law. So it was the Roman authorities that had to enforce it. They did enforce it. But God raised him up, having freed him from death, because it was impossible for him to be held in its power. For David says concerning him, I saw the Lord always before me, for he is at my right hand, so that I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart was glad, and my tongue rejoiced. Moreover, my flesh will live in hope. For ye will not abandon my soul to Hades, or let your Holy One experience corruption. So corruption is going to be the dissolution of the human flesh, the complete breakdown. You have made known to me the ways of life, and you will make me full of gladness with your presence. Fellow Israelites, I may say to you confidently that our ancestor David, that he both died and was buried, and his tomb is with us this day. Since he was a prophet, he knew that God had sworn with him an oath to him that he would put one of his descendants on the throne. Foreseeing this, David spoke of the resurrection of the Messiah, saying, he was not abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh experience corruption. So you can go through that read. That's going to be your early Acts read. The way John testifies it, and he opens about, because John was a witness of this, John lived through this, and John matures into being an older man, and you can go back to the opening of the Gospel of John, and John says that his own did not accept him. But it's not about his own did not accept him. He moves on. But those who did receive him, he gave the ability, he gave the right, he gave the authority. And this is also legal structure to become sons of God. Not the urge, not the power of the flesh, but by the power of the Holy Spirit. That's where we are today. Pentecost, the birth of the church. Pentecost, the Spirit comes to prove, to convict. It's not an easy task. And so this is really going to break loose. And it's going to be this noise. What is it we hear? This drunkenness? No. These guys are testifying. There's something going on here that's bigger than the capacity of the human beings, because it would have been shut down. It is a testimony of history that things can get shut down, can be quieted down. And this whole term about the apocalypte is the uncovering, is the taking the lid off of it. And the lid is blown off of it here. It's the revealing of Jesus Christ. And it's all for that generation and the generations to follow into our generations. And we're all called to be part of that. To accept it. To not be holdouts. Again, it's a delicate thing. There are holdouts. It's what's called Holocaust denial people. It's just craziness. I mean, what is that all about? It's too delicate to go into. But we're called to listen up, to let the Holy Spirit work in our lives. That it's to our personal benefit. It's to the benefit of our families. It's the benefit of the children after us. It's for all people everywhere, for all ages. It's the work of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.